to the show. Welcome, Gale. You are on mute. That should be a t-shirt.
It should be. Thank you, Ingrid. I am very honored to be excited to speak with you and everyone else today. Hello, everyone who's joining me.
Awesome. I'm a fan of intros done really well, but I am an even bigger fan of allowing people to introduce themselves and in so doing talk about the things that they're really proud of, which sometimes we just kind of as introducers. And I should back up a little
I
bit.
go in my class and I'm saying,
All right, we got that. We're good. Okay. Hey, Eddie's here. I'm so sorry. Shout out to Eddie Teleferro, Josh Ashford, and Rich Grundy, and Camilla. I'm just so happy that all of the Journey folks could be here with us today. So Gale, before we get started, I'll talk a little bit about myself. I am Ingrid Green, and I am the founder of Drones for Girls, but I also am really proud to work with Journey and all of the things they do here in Detroit, Michigan, and I'm so glad to be doing this Hustle Pro talk series. And our first guest is Gale Henderson. So Gale, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gale Henderson. I am many things, but with respect to Hustle Pro, I am a code instructor for Journey, and I am also a technical analyst at Accenture, with a couple of side hustles to supplement my household, not just financially, but also inspirationally, because I'm also a mother of two. And I do believe that there are multiple paths to get to whatever your desired destination is. So I want to make sure that they see me hustle. So aside from just bringing in extra income, I want to make sure I'm bringing up very strong young women.
Awesome. So you were born in Detroit, is that right?
Absolutely. So I am Detroit born and bred. My family is from here. My mom raised me here. She worked on the line at GM, and I'm really deep into the automotive world here in Detroit. It's part of my pedigree. So absolutely.
Okay. And shout out, where did you go to high school? Shout out to your high school.
There are only two types of people in this world, Ingrid.
I stepped in it.
You did. So I graduated from Cass Tech, Detroit, CT.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So graduated from Cass Tech. Nice. Technician in the house. And I know you went to a number of colleges. So start at the beginning and work your way to most recently. Tell me all the places you went to college.
So my dad would like to call me a traveling student. I went to Michigan State University for 2 years. My freshman and sophomore year, had a really good time. So again, we like to call it Cass Tech University sometimes. Same colors, a lot of the same people that you graduate with end up there. So it was apropos for the moment. And then my educational endeavors also took me to Wayne State University, where I finished my bachelor's and also gained my master's. So just those two. I mean, you can count Wayne County too. I went there for all of the general requirements for my undergraduate degree. So cheat code for those of you who don't know, it's cheaper and you can transfer the credits.
Okay, that's cool. Off the top of your head, do you think that where you chose to go to school made a difference in how you got to where you're at today in your career?
A bit, yes, I do. I absolutely do. So attending Michigan State University was not necessarily a planned approach for me. At the time that I was finishing up high school, I was very clear, right, that I wanted to make something of myself. And my parents also made it very clear that I needed to make something of myself. And so I was clear that college was the next step. But at that moment in life, I mean, I was 17, maybe 18. And I wasn't clear what I wanted to do. I didn't have the slightest idea, really. I had ideas on what some of my passions or interests were, sort of, but not completely. So I kind of accepted going to the first school that accepted me. I shared this story with Richard once, and if my mom is watching, she's probably going to cringe. But at the time that I was graduating high school, Harvard was doing this program where they were trying to get more students of color to attend. And so you had to meet certain income requirements and grade requirements and all of these different pieces of criteria. And I did. And my mom was like, my baby's going to Harvard. So she put in all the paperwork, and I did all of the interviews. There were like a series of them, and you ended up having to interview the last one before you determined whether or not you were accepted. You had to interview with Supreme Court judges. And so my mom got me all dressed up and took me down to the courthouse so that I could interview with one of the judges who would help to make that decision. My guess is at the time he probably was an alum from Harvard, but I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go, which was probably a shock to my mom too, because I was a nerdy kid, right? I got all the A's and I did all the things, and I wanted to be a Rhodes Scholar and all of this stuff. But by the time I got to high school, I became a lot more aware of demographic and a lot more aware of comfort zones and a lot more aware of just social norms. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to go to Harvard. I'm probably going to be the only Black girl there. And then what if I'm not smart enough? And all of these things I started doubting myself, and then not really knowing if I belonged there, or even if people didn't think I belonged there, the value of me carving a space for not just me, but someone else behind me. I didn't really have that at the time. So I say all that to say, I blew the interview purposefully. I don't recommend anyone do that because it is one of my biggest regrets. But it taught me a lot about just understanding what I need to know in order to feel comfortable and excel in certain spaces, right? And what certain students need to hear that we take for granted that they know as, high school seniors, right? My mom certainly poured into me, but I don't think she was aware of some of those insecurities I had, because I'm sure she would have walked me through that a little differently. Going to Michigan State, though, I wasn't sure what my major was going to be. I was a professional student, so I had about 5 or 6 of them before I finally ended up with a degree. And yes, go green. Before I finally ended up with a degree. And I feel like the people that you run into in certain spaces help to dictate the next move for you. So for example, if I hadn't blown that interview, I'm sure I probably would have gotten in just because my merit was just up there. And I think I would have met different people, been in different circles, and therefore probably traveled a different path professionally. For high school students, I think it's something that you can kind of compare to how people view certain high schools in the city versus others. Certain students sometimes get access or opportunity that not everyone in the city gets. And so that doesn't mean that the rest of the students in other schools are not as successful. Sometimes they're far more successful than some others who go to more esteemed schools. But it is a matter of exposure, right? Who do you see? Who do you interact with? Who's in your area? What businesses are there giving internships and things of that nature? So for me, once I got to Wayne State, I was studying journalism, but my internship was actually with an automotive supplier, right? So I was really heavily ingrained in the automotive industry without having a career path that said, oh, you'll be an engineer or something of that nature. So depending on where you go, that can help to affect your path. It's very similar to what they call like the butterfly effect, right? When they say like if you travel in time and you change one thing, you can change someone's entire life. It's kind of the same way I think with school. When you go certain places, you meet certain people and interact in certain circles, and that dictates the path that you do or don't take. Can you guys hear me still? You're on mute, Ingrid.
Okay, so we got a few rough patches. There's some technical things to sort out, but we got this. We got this. So what I tried to say before was that my parents are immigrants. They're from Jamaica, and there was a lot of pressure about education because education for them was, in their eyes, was a pathway to being able to take care of yourself and be responsible and contribute to your communities. And so it was education, education, education. Do you feel that expectations from parents, guardians, teachers, friends, expectations, can that pressure is an integral part of your decision making process in terms of what job, what school you go to? And is it positive? And if it's not positive, how can you make that pressure positive?
Absolutely. So, as we discussed, I grew up in Detroit, right in the heart of the city, right? So, by no means were we, a highly affluent family, right? So, I had my own pressures from just seeing like how my environment was and where we grew up and what I wanted to change for my immediate family, not even thinking about the family I would one day make, but the ones who raised me, right? So that took that applied a great deal of pressure on me. But my parents had very high academic standards for me, and they definitely took me to task anytime it looked like I wavered. But I think that it was that really helped me. In some instances, some students that pressure could be a negative factor because sometimes it pushes them in a direction to do things that they may not want to do or that they might not be interested in. But based on my story, like I told you, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to major in or what I wanted to do. But I knew I had to go to school, right? And that was a pressure from my parents. And I feel like if they hadn't have applied that pressure to me, I might not have went right away after high school, or I might not have, tried so hard to stay in there, because there were times where I didn't really feel like I would finish, right? Like I would make it. I'm not a 4-year degree person. It took me 6 years to get my bachelor's degree. Um, it took me 2 years to get my master's. And on that path, I was like, whoa, this is kind of difficult sometimes. And then, you hit adulthood. So I ended up being a full-time employee, a full-time student, still full-time child. And then by the time I got to grad school, a full-time mom, as well as all those other things. So I had to also figure out how to balance life, and that pressure of, just like bringing home that degree to my parents and everything was really important to me. The funny thing is, though, along my path, I was a dietetics major, a pharmacy major, a engineering major, then finally a journalism major. And then when I went to grad school, I majored in PR or comm. But along that path, I was always kind of trying to chase something that would make a whole lot of money, right? With, hence engineering and all that beautiful stuff. But one day I was just like, I don't really like this. Like, I'm great at math. I will crunch any kind of calculation, any kind of equation for fun still today, right? But it's not something that I wanted to do professionally once I started like matriculating through different classes that were germane to those topics. And my mom just was like, you write so well and you write as a hobby. Why are you not doing something with that? And I was like, that's not gonna make no money, mama. We ain't got time to be paying for them to teach me something I already know how to do. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna be this engineering major. And she just let me do me, looking at me, giving me the side eye, like, all right, well, as long as you finish, but I don't think that's the path. But she kept saying stuff to me along the way as I would get frustrated with class or something, like, well, that's not what you like to do anyway. I mean, so-and-so has this good writing program, or, maybe it's journalism, maybe it's English, maybe it's creative writing, but you need to do something. And when she kept doing that, it got me into the journalism school at Wayne State. But I still hadn't figured out my space there because I didn't want to be a journalist either. So it was like that pressure for her to make sure that I was educated pushed me into school, even though I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go or how I was going to get there. But then the nurturing side of that is that she knew who I was a bit, right? She saw the things that I liked. And so she was able to apply a different kind of pressure to help me like stop thinking about the dollar and start thinking about my interests.
So do you think that another part of what you decide to do for work and what you're good at, and where maybe a little bit of what you decide to study at the different schools comes from your interests, comes from an awareness about your interests? Because you might, like me, you might have several.
Yeah, so I actually do. I have several, and what I ultimately ended up doing catered to my interests, but it took me a long time to realize that you need to be pursuing passions instead of paychecks, right? Of course, especially if you come from like a disenfranchised area, growing up, the first thing you think about when you think about careers in school is money, right? How can I make more money? How can I get my family out of this situation? Or how can I, just live a little bit more lavishly than I've been living? And so you go to school and you want to become an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, a pharmacist. I was like definitely enrolled in the Eugene Applebaum School of Pharmacy at Wayne State, and I suck at chemistry. So be happy I'm not your local pharmacist. But but in that journey, which I think is the one thing that four-year university will teach you in the hard way, because they give you all these prerequisites and all of these university requirements in order to be a well-rounded student. You get exposed to so many things that you kind of figure out life on the way, but it'd be nice to figure it out before you've amassed a whole bunch of student loans, right? So what I did learn was that I had to stop chasing the paycheck and start chasing passion. And with my mom applying that pressure, like, hey, you write well, it kind of helped me. What I will say is I got into what is it called? American Axle Manufacturing. It was my first real internship. Like, it paid, and I had real tasks, and I was able to write, and it was really cool because I also grew up in a very automotive centric family. My mom worked on the line. My grandfather was a mechanic, so like, to not know how to change a tire, check your oil, do your brakes is a sin in my family, right? So I was working in the auto industry, but writing for them, translating complex topics, and that got cool. But then, I got to, I would start to progress and find different companies and decorate my resume with all these beautiful resume ornaments. But then I got to a space where my personality and my humanity wasn't always appreciated at the table. So I had to figure out how to rebrand myself. And I ended up attending a boot camp, a coding boot camp at Grand Circus. And I'm big on like problem solving. Like I told you guys, I will crunch a couple of calculations in a minute. I enjoy, difficult tasks and just kind of understanding complex topics. So when I saw that there was an opportunity for me to learn how to code, I was like, why not? I like being in school, and I've been out for too long already. If you look at like my LinkedIn or something, you'll see like every 2 years I'm taking a class or finding something. I didn't even know that was my pattern until I started putting together my resume. Like, oh, I'm a 2-year, then I got to learn something new kind of a person. But in that space, I learned that I was able to find the intersectionality of my passions, right? I am good at speaking with people. I am good at kind of persuading people to do things. I'm good at teaching people things, but I'm also good at understanding complex topics. And I'm also good at crunching numbers and all these things. So I found myself in a position where I'm able to kind of work in tech and do tech-centric things when I want to, nerd out. But then when I need, to satisfy the extrovert in me, when I need to write something, when I need to design something, I can also do that, right? Some of my students are actually on this live stream, and it is really refreshing to see them, because they know I get real creative and we start talking, and I talk to them like they're my homies. I talk to them like they're my kids or sometimes my siblings. And then I get really serious, like, okay, where are my 32 lines of code, or, what's going on? And I think that if I hadn't understood like where my talents lie, I wouldn't have been able to excel in certain spaces.
It's interesting that you talk about talents and how they show up in our lives as skills when we spend some time with them and when we focus on them, because all of the things that you talked about, problem solving and talking to people and I was sure you were talking about architecture, because I studied architecture at Howard University, HU. Okay, so that was just for Rich Grundy, because if I hear him say "go green" one more time,
go green.
I had to put okay, yes. I was waiting for that, but I was sure that all of the things that you talked about, that you're good at, those talents that transfer into skills, really can be found in almost any industry.
Absolutely.
In many different industries. And that's probably why I thought you were talking about, or came to mind, architecture came to mind, because that's what you have to do.
Absolutely. I think that anyone can sit in a classroom and absorb information and then regurgitate it, right? But just because you can be an A student and regurgitate what you've learned doesn't mean that you can actually apply that theory when in practice, right? So even if you're a C student sitting somewhere, D student, whatever the case may be, if you don't think that you're good at this because
wow,
you're sadly mistaken, because you have to, when you go out into corporate America, they're not asking for your GPA. Some of them don't even really check if you actually went to college. You could have said you went to Harvard and they would have never even looked at it twice, right? What they will see is how you show up every day, right? They're going to see what ideas you bring to the table. They're going to see how you react when you're met with an obstacle. They're going to try and pull something out of you, because be clear, like, they had a team before you joined it, right? So the goal is to diversify and bring different perspectives so that they can get better outcomes. So if you can come to the table with your talents, knowing how to package and market and brand yourself, knowing how to fill gaps. So for example, in the tech industry, a lot of people who are these amazing software developers, they can be highly introverted. And so once they create this amazing app and they want to sell it to
and
you,
they can't sell it.
They can't sell it to you because they can't talk to you, right? And so here I come. I got a degree in talking, right? And I can code a little bit here and there, and I can teach it a little bit here and there. So now I'm touching all the different areas that this industry needs. So I can partner if Josh is an amazing software developer and he's like, all right, I can put together the app. Here you go, you sell it. I take it, look at the highlights, what it does, what it doesn't do, how it might fill our clients, needs, and I go and I tell them, hey, you need this. And let me tell you why you need it. And also, I get to bring my charisma to the table. I get to talk for a living, right? So you have to know that even if you're not some awesome coder or some awesome, physicist or something, you can still penetrate an industry without directly executing those tasks. You can be tech adjacent, you can be medical adjacent, and still be very, very much critical to the bottom line of whatever company you serve.
100%. All right, so I feel like I don't want to hog all of this time. It's been great, but let me just make some space. If anybody has a question that they would like to ask Gale, now's the time to put it out there. And if you have any questions particularly for her, or if you're thinking about going to college, or if you're thinking about where you're at in your high school and whatever your concerns are, let us know in the Q&A or in the chat, and Camilla or Rich will let us know what those things are.
So we can see the chat too if they send it to everyone or at least direct it to either.
Go ahead, Eddie. Eddie's got a question. I don't know if he's on mute.
There we go. I've been on leash. There we go. I'm not on the leash anymore. Awesome. All right. So you said something that really, really resonated with me. You said something like every couple of years or so, I just have to learn something new. And that's exactly how I am. So for me, the last thing was the stock market and investing, as me and like Richard talk about it often. So I have a question for you. What is the next thing that you want? What is the next thing for you? What's the next thing that you would like to learn?
So Eddie, you're aware because we've worked together, but the latest thing that I have learned and been able to apply a bit is React and React Native.
Oh, yeah.
And so for those of you who are not familiar, it's a coding framework. Leveraging the coding language JavaScript. It's a framework, so it kind of makes some of the coding work easier. And it's different code packages that you can use in order to build apps and such. And then my goal right now that's been kind of getting away from me with everything else I've got going on is that I want to become AWS certified. So for those who don't know, AWS is an acronym for Amazon Web Services, and they essentially supply cloud-based services for different businesses or tech-specific activity. Anything from servers, which is pretty much where all things tech and computer live, to different databases and things like that. And so as companies get more and more digitized and more tech savvy, they tend to transition to cloud and make sure that they offer certain services, and they do that through Amazon, who gives software as a service. And so Amazon has an opportunity for you to learn all of these different software packages and systems that they have so that you can then teach others how to do it, or kind of assemble packages for your clients leveraging their software services. So I want to become Amazon Web Service certified. There are a hybrid of different certifications, and it is not an easy task, but I've taken quite a few Amazon-based web training modules in order to get closer to my goal, but that'll probably take me a little longer than expected.
Thank you for that answer. I know just personally how difficult AWS can be having. I could just learn it on the fly for myself. That's very, very important. Like Richard was saying, the cloud is everything, man. It's just, especially like as each second goes by, the cloud becomes more important. I put it that way.
Absolutely. So when I was coming up, just understanding software development was like the next big wave. And right now it looks like it's cloud. So
yeah.
Cheat code for the youngsters. Richard, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question. Cloud and cybersecurity are the next big things to me, I think. So I took down some notes, but I'm not going to go through all of those questions. But can you talk about some of the things, the roles that you've had in technology?
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, because, yep.
Awesome. So just to give you guys a background, I went to Grand Circus. I actually met Richard at my demo day, which is like our graduation where we demonstrate the application that we've been working on and building. And different employers and businesses come to see if they can kind of find some new talent. And Richard was one of those employers and or businesses that came through to look at everybody's app. Mine was very community centric, and so I think that is what appealed to him, because his nonprofit, of course, builds up the community. And so we got in touch. So he actually gave me my very first start in tech. I was a code instructor, which was really cool because I had an amazing instructor myself. So I wanted to immediately embody those same characteristics, because when I walked in there, I expected it to be me in a classroom full of young white men. My class was about 50% African American, 50% white, and there were probably like 5 Black women, maybe 3. And so it already became really important, but my instructor was a young Black woman, only 5 years older than me. We came from the same neighborhood, same high school, all of that. And so it made it very possible for me because I walked in there thinking I wasn't going to finish. And so I became a code instructor with Journey. I interacted with a bunch of kids, which was really cool because coming up in high school and even in college, the one thing I never wanted to be was a teacher. And it is the one job that I probably enjoy more than any of the other jobs that I have. I left Journey and started working for Comerica Bank in their DevOps department. And DevOps is like the intersection of software development and technology operations. Basically kind of making all of that cohesive and make sense and be efficient. And so there at Comerica, they were transitioning all of their apps from on-premise servers, so actual tangible big square servers in a building, to the cloud. And so my role helped them transition. So I actually had to write code that would go into these servers, pull the information out and put it over here, and then build a cloud server for it to live at over here. And so they call that infrastructure as code. When I started that job, I knew none of the languages they wanted me to know. And still today, some of those languages that I leveraged and used are still a mystery to me, but that is also the beauty of becoming a software developer. You're never going to know everything, but what you do know is Google's there and Google's your friend. And then so from there, I got a job at Accenture as a tech analyst, which is also where I am now. And with Accenture, I have helped to build the functional design for different websites and portals that some of our customers and clients needed. So we had, I can't name the client that I had, but I had to build out the how a website would function, how it would, what kind of tables would it use, what kind of language are we using to build it, how many data modules will be in one table, how many databases did we need to use, what kinds of functions did we need in order to go to this database, pull this information, match it with this database, and see if I'm verifying the right client, those kinds of things. For a website that would be like a closed loop system. So someone will go to this client and say, hey, I need this service to be started. And so from the moment they engaged that business to the moment that the task was done, they were working in a website that my team helped build. And I helped to basically build a map that told the software developers how to build that website. And then I still teach for Journey. I've taught some of you. And then I also help them from time to time building whatever they need done too. So a bunch of different tech and tech adjacent roles.
That sounds amazing. I know that Kamari had a question. Kamari, if you're still on, then maybe you can just ask Gale your question.
I see it, actually. Kamari asked, was it hard for you graduating college trying to find a job in your degree field? For me, yes and no. When I graduated from undergrad, I didn't have anyone biting. You know, I had a couple of callbacks that ended up in not getting the job, but, you know, you're a great applicant, but we just went with someone else. You know, thanks, but no thanks email. But I ended up going to grad school and I got a co-op, which is like a glorified internship. It's a little bit more intricate and probably more money than an internship, but it's still an internship. And I worked there. And so from there, I was only able to be in that role as long as I was a student, but I was finishing grad school. And so I started looking around and applying to different places. But a headhunter actually found me. So all the places I wanted didn't want me, but there was a headhunter who was like harassing me on LinkedIn. And at the time, LinkedIn was still kind of new for landing jobs. So I didn't trust that this person reaching out to me was real. I'm like, oh, they're gonna steal my information and then I'm gonna be broke or something. But he reached out to me on LinkedIn, on Indeed, and a couple of other places. And and I did an interview, and it just so happened that they were headhunting for another company who knew some people at the company that I worked for. And so once they started checking references, they were really excited and thrilled to have me. And I worked there for like literally only 9 months, and my boss was leaving. And so my boss was like, hey, I'm about to go. Things are getting a little crazy here. I think you should leave too, which is why it's important to network, because she could have just left me there floundering, but she valued my work and my ethic and my personality. So she's like, I'm going to give you the cheat code, leave. And so from there, like things just snowballed. I just was able to get more roles. The more experience you have, the easier it is to get jobs, which is why I would encourage students who are in college to intern as much as possible, right? And if you can do it for free, you know, kudos. I was one of those people who could not, but I wish I had the time to, because I would have interned more. Because the conundrum that a lot of college students face is that you go and you apply to a job and they want 700 years of experience, but they don't want to hire you if you don't have it. How will you get the experience if you can't get hired? Well, the one answer that I found, there should be many options for this, but I haven't unearthed them all. The one answer that I found is that interning, volunteering, those kinds of things are resume decorators that will help you sell your experience.
And just before we go to, I know Roberto had a question as well. We'll go to that real quick. I just want to say that even when you intern, just like you did, Gale, getting to know your boss. It's great that you worked and you executed and you did your job, but you could have just done your job and gone home. But you got out there a little bit and you got to know your boss a little bit, to the point where she wanted to tell you, give you the cheat code. I'm leaving. You might want to go too. But like getting to know people at your job when you're interning, or doing a co-op is very, very helpful. And that is a tool that works the same way as building a relationship with someone you don't know that you meet at a professional gig. So I will let Roberto ask his question.
I have a few questions for, I don't know who was talking about the software. I think that was Gale. I think her name was Gale.
Yeah.
Was it hard for you to like become that? Like, what did it take
To become a software developer?
Yeah.
So I will say it was not easy. But I also wouldn't characterize it as hard because I was interested in the content, right? I think that things that are hard for me, things that I'm interested in, or things that it takes me a little bit more to focus on. But it does take a lot of practice. It does take a lot of attention. It does take a lot of focus. I think that if you like to problem solve, or if you like to write, or if you like to tinker, then it would be good for you. I equate coding to writing because I like to master languages, right? And all coding really is speaking a language that the computer understands. So you're actually telling the computer, hey, do this, show this, right, share this, and you're just speaking their own language, like it was German or Spanish, right? And you're just typing it. So for those who are like wordsmiths, or those who like to communicate, you can look at coding in that light, and it might help you really connect to it better. If you are a problem solver, there are a lot of instances where it's like, we want this to show up on the screen, but in this space, and we can't get that to happen, or we need it to show up this amount of times, and one characteristic changes each time it shows. And so now we're solving problems with code, right? So if you're a tinkerer, you want to solve problems, then it might not be hard to you if you frame that job, that task in that perspective. So I don't want to necessarily label it as difficult. I mean, it's hard, but it takes effort.
Okay, I also have another question. How come like you went through all the little programs that you did? Like you said, you did pharmacy, you did journalist, And I don't remember the other one. How come you did all of those? Were you trying to find something that was good for you, or was it, yeah?
So I think it was a hybrid of the things that you were asking. I was trying to find something that was good for me, but I also was trying to find something that was gonna make me some money.
Right.
I could stay at home and read a bunch of books, or watch a bunch of documentaries, or create my own curriculum to learn if all I was in it for was to learn. But like many of you, I'm also in it to earn. So I was chasing high dollar positions, hence pharmacy, because like I told you, I sucked at most science, right? Like chemistry was cool-ish because it had math in it. But the moment that we got to, understand that protons and electrons, ions, what's going to happen if I mix them all together,
right,
you lost me, right? Biology, whatever. But I knew that pharmacists make money, 6-figure job. So I'm gonna go and try, right? Because, like I said, if you don't approach something with, oh, it's gonna be hard, but more like, oh, it's gonna take effort. I could have became a pharmacist if I really would have applied myself, but my interest wasn't there, right? And so now I'm paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for something that I don't really want to do.
Okay, my next. Oh,
yes,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Interest.
And my next question was journalism. How come you didn't like it? What was difficult about it? Was it even difficult?
No, journalism was not difficult. I was actually awesome at it. But it's one thing to like to write and to have a poetic license or to be very descriptive. It's a whole different subject to write in a journalistic manner. You got to be really concise, because you got to say a whole lot in a little bit of space and time.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. 2, it's not a job that you can, like, in 5 years I could be making 6 figures, right? You've been watching the news. Them same anchors been there since you've probably been able to watch TV. They don't
That's what I really want to do, but like I don't. That's what I want to do, but I don't know if I have I don't know if I could do that.
Well, that's part of the process of college, right? That's part of the process of attorney, is actually getting in those spaces and understanding what it really meant. Because I liked to write, and even in school, like, my demo reel was fun. I like video editing. I like soundtrack editing. Like, I could do all of it all day, but the moment you tell me, like, oh no, you got to write about the biggest cookie in the world. Did y'all see Bruce Almighty? He was a journalist. Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
He was a journalist, and he was so upset. And it's a scene where he's like in the rain with some stupid umbrella hat on.
Right.
To everybody about the biggest cookie in the world, but he wanted to tell more meaningful stories. And I mean, there is a validity to, you have to pay your dues and earn, your way into certain spaces, but that shouldn't be it shouldn't be at the expense of your professional integrity. And in that role, Bruce felt like, I'm talking to the world about a cookie. That just wasn't his bag, right? And so, but then you look at Anderson Cooper or Angela Rye, or even Erica Erickson, who is from this area. She graduated from Wayne State, and now she's on like Fox 2. Like, they told stories that had merit. So it can be easy, but sometimes the ladder to climb to get there, to me, it just wasn't worth it. You start out making very little, and it's
really.
Yes, you do.
Oh, see.
Cost me more the degree than it would have to use the degree, and I found issue with that.
No, I was just saying, like, I don't want to do something like where I'm paying more to do it before I can make it.
True, but then you also have to know that it is also what you make it, right? Depending on how you go about that could dictate how quickly you rise to the top. So one of the things, I interned at Channel 4. And I actually applied for an internship. They never called me back. I was feeling like, oh no, here's another one I'm not getting. So I called them, like, can you at least tell me why? And he was like, why?
Yes, that would hurt me. It would hurt me.
And as a student, you have room to make those kind of mistakes. In the professional world, people are not going to tell you why, and they might be offended that you had the nerve to call and ask them. But as a student, you have that license, right? When I called, he was like, oh my God, I totally forgot to hire interns. Like all of y'all are waiting for an answer.
Okay, so I have another question.
No, hold on. Yeah, so I got jump back in. I'm gonna jump back in, and Roberto is unmuted, so I'm gonna let him ask his question, and then we do need to wrap this up a little bit.
Okay.
So Roberto, go ahead.
Wait, so do you start off like as a student when you go to like when you apply for somewhere? Do you start off as a student? Like, you know how like you would do student teaching? Do you start off as like a student or like?
It depends. I'm not quite sure what your question is.
When you were in college or after?
No,
college?
like after you do it and you apply to like the job.
Okay, so after college.
Right.
It depends. After college, some organizations might grab you just as you're leaving school, and they might have you do like a residency where you actually do some kind of rotation in the company. You see all of the different business functions within that company and then decide where you want to go. Or that could get you right after college, and it can be like a transitional special role that they make just for fresh college graduates, and after you've been there so long, then they promote you to a junior position or something. It just really depends on your path.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we got Ara. Ara's gonna ask a question, and then I think that's it for questions. So go ahead.
Ara, make it good. You're my student.
No pressure.
You gotta unmute Ara. Oh, he isn't muted.
Oh, I was talking, but
And now we hear you.
Hi, girl. Okay. How different do you think your life would have been if you passed the last Harvard interview?
I think it would be drastically different and scarily the same all at once. It'd be drastically different because I'd be in different circles, but I think it would still ultimately end up being the same because I ended up majoring in things that weren't completely aligned with my interests all the way, right? So I still would have found a way to be in a space where I'm working a main job, doing a couple of side hustles, like I teach. I build websites for small businesses. I do their social media. I curate a digital presence for them, and still do my 9 to 5, right? I believe that if I'd have aced the Harvard interview and went and graduated from Harvard, because we would even have to say that I made it all the way through. I might have left. I didn't even stay at Michigan State. Who knows? But let's say I went and stayed and finished there. I think that it would be different because I probably would have different types of career opportunities or a different network of people. But I still think I would probably be working a couple of jobs, doing a lot of entrepreneurial endeavors and talking to students anyway.
And we have one last question. One last question from Walter. Go ahead, Walter.
Okay, my question was, do you think that even though you did want to make some money, do you think that that can ultimately affect your decision to work at a certain place?
Yes. So what I've learned right now is that it's funny you should ask this. I'm actually thinking about making a very big life decision that prioritizes my my interests, my value as a person, and things like that over what I get paid, right? Because you'll find that you can work for a company that pays you top dollar, but if they don't respect who you are or if the company values don't align with yours, you could find yourself wanting to leave very quickly or not fitting into their social norm. And so if you don't want to leave because you like the money, if you're not necessarily assimilating to that corporate culture, they might find a way to get rid of you, right? It just really depends. So chasing the dollar doesn't mean that you're always going to get it, which is why I say it's very important to understand your talents and your passions. And if you can find an intersection there, then that's probably going to be where you're most successful. And when I say that, talent and passion can be synonymous, but there are things that I'm good at that I'm not passionate about. And there are things that I'm passionate about that I'm not good at. But because I'm passionate about them, I have more wherewithal to focus on it and become better, right? And the things that I'm good at, those are things I can do quickly to earn money. right? So when you put those two together and you find a role that leverages, if not one, two of them, then that's probably the most successful space for you.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Very cool. So before I leap into my question, Demonche was curious. What sign are you? What's your astrological sign?
Demonche, what do you think? Well, I already told you, but I'm a Gemini.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sagittarius in the house, but okay.
Oh, well, it's that.
I guess the last question I have, and maybe it brings it full circle, is if you could talk to your high school self, if you could talk to your 18-year-old self. I mean, you've gone through so much at this point, and you have, your journey, your life story has taken all kinds of twists and turns that you could not have predicted, that have influenced where you're at today. Despite all of this, or maybe because of all of those things, what would you tell yourself in high school?
I would tell my high school self to spend more time with me, right? Understanding what I like, right? I knew what that was. I love to write and I enjoyed problem solving, but I didn't know it enough to say, this is what I want to do. I was just so focused on doing, what I was told, what I thought was the right thing, and what I thought would make me so much money that I wasn't even really tuning into who I am, right? Can I operate in a place like this, right? Can I do it? And then after finding that answer, asking another question. Well, if you can, why don't you? And if you can't, what's stopping you, right? Like understanding who I am so that I can then make decisions based off that. Because if you make decisions based off of what someone else tells you, like you need to go to school and make money, you're gonna be majoring in pharmacy, and then 10 years later you won't be a pharmacist. So I would tell my high school self to just pay more attention to me.
I think that paying attention to who you are and the self-awareness that comes from that really helps you not only make the money, because my mom used to say, look, even plumbers can have gold-plated tools. If they are really good at what they do, then there's somebody out there who is willing to pay them to do it properly one time, not two times, and spending the same amount of money. So that was my mom. But I'm just saying that that comes from self-awareness. You excel at things that you actually are good at, not the things that you're miserable doing. And the worst thing that can happen to you, and maybe this is a moment, but the worst thing that can happen to you is to end up someplace you want to leave. You're not happy. Where you're not happy.
I think the other thing I would tell myself, and I'm sure that I didn't recognize it at the time, so if there are any high school students on here, you might not recognize it either, but I let fear lead me a lot, right? I didn't do a lot of things I wasn't good at, and I tempered myself, because I didn't want to be judged, or I didn't want to lose opportunity, or I didn't want to embarrass myself. And when you are that age, it is time for you to experiment. It's time for you to learn. So if there was ever a time to fail, it's in that moment, because you're at the very beginning of your life and you can bounce back. And some people might look at that failure and find value in how you operated within the failure, as opposed to just saying, oh, she failed, right? So don't be afraid to try things you're afraid of doing, and don't be afraid to fail.
I think failure is definitely, I mean, you can feel like a failure, and you can actually go back to zero at any age. The key is how you climb out of that.
Absolutely.
But Gale, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you so much for spending some time with us and letting us know a little bit about our journey. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks so much.